Do you have a minute for Comadre time?
Hola Comadres, welcome to another episode of Comadreando podcast. I'm your host Marcy, and today we have an amazing guest. Her name is Dr. Luz, and I will let her introduce herself. Who are you?
Hello, everyone. My name is Luz Maria Villanueva. I am a clinical psychologist, and I am a sex and intimacy coach. And my background is in the teaching. I did a lot of teaching at college, and I've done some also clinical work and therapy work in the world of the private sector and as well as the public sector. I've done research. I write for a magazine, and I also speak in a radio station. It's called Pera. And I write for the radio. I write for a magazine called Latinas con Poder. I also have a nonprofit, and I have my own company on sex and intimacy. And I do all kinds of retreats and fun things for women and couples too.
Awesome. Okay. So, I usually tell the comadres how we connected. And actually, Dr. Luz and Paola, her assistant, reached out to me via my website requesting to come on the show. And since I like to talk all kinds of things that make us women, especially, balancing all our roles, not just being a mother, but also, being a sexual being still, even after becoming a mom. So that's why I wanted to bring her on the show. So today's topic, we're going to be exploring sensuality and sexuality even after becoming moms. And the reason why I chose the topic for today is that I love to show different ways to mother and to highlight amazing professionals in different fields and that are helping our community heal. So today we're going to be talking about tapping into our divine feminine and owning our sexuality in different ways. But before we get started, we're going to get a couple of details out of the way. Dr. Luz, so you said you're a clinical psychologist?
Yes, I have a doctorate in clinical psychology.
Do you have your private practice right now, or are you just doing more of the talking and writing right now?
I actually do have my practice as a sex and intimacy coach. So I do work with individuals, with women as well as with couples.
So tell me about the process about selecting people for that. Like what is it that you look for in couples to deem them, like to deem whether they would benefit from the coaching with you?
I think what it is that, socially we have changed a lot. We really have. And what's showing up is that we really need to redefine sexuality. We still, where some people are still in the space of being caught up into what it was back in the wives of being a good woman and then you have the other sector where it's totally the other extreme is like, I'll do whatever, whenever. And so what happens is those, whatever look you have, view you have to make it work in a relationship, it's really different. At the beginning, young girls are like, everything is organic. Life changes, things change. So what I'm constantly working with couples is really redefining their sexuality, and not as a person, but just as a couple, how it looks like, because it's not going to look like when you're 15, 17, 18, as it is when you're 50, 60. And I have couples in their 60s and late 60s.
That's so important. And also like having conversations around sex, because a lot of the time I feel it's a little taboo. I feel like now in my I'm almost 40. In my late 30s, I feel more comfortable that way. Mm-hmm. But when I was younger, that I was married, I didn't feel comfortable in having that type of conversation with the person that I was married to.
Yeah.
And I feel like through speaking to so many women, I feel like a lot of them do not. So it's so important to have these conversations and to, really broach the topic about how are we going to be intimate now as a couple, as opposed to what it was like before, when we were both single and we were out in the world, doing our own thing.
Yeah, it really is different because when you were young and you're single, you're kind of like having an experience of the joy. Everything is fun, everything is exciting, and you really much are connected to the sexual experience. You have a lot of things in life that are happening that make you feel sexy. You want to get dressed for the weekend when you're going to go out and party. But what happens when you're married and you have kids, life changes. The conversations that you have in your own head and the responsibilities that you have are no longer that. They're more about, I gotta get to work, I got in time, I gotta get the baby going, I gotta take care of this responsibility, the payment. Oh my gosh, I forgot to bring the food for the dog. I mean, your brain and your role in life totally changes, totally shifts and changes. So you start letting yourself go, who you are as a female, as a divine woman, as being central. Starts getting back. It's like you gotta hurry up because you can't carry the baby in heels. All of that starts changing. It's harder. I know some women can, but it gets harder and harder.
I love that you mentioned that. It's so hard. I feel like the definition of sexy changes once you have children. It's not the same as like when it was in your 20s. It's not, going out in a skimpy outfit. I feel like after I became a mother, like owning that power of like being able to have this child, and like the way that my body changed, I was able to own that later on, obviously not like right away, because it's I feel like there needs to everybody goes through this sort of shift in their thinking about what it is to be sexy once they become a mom. So it's very different. Dr. What is her name? Esther Perel.
Yeah.
She talks about that a lot, about how couples really is really hard for them to be intimate with each other when they have all these other things going on, and it has to be like a conscious effort that they're doing to be able to reconnect with each other and still have that relationship, or like actively work on it to get it to another level where it wasn't before.
It is, and what it really requires is really a lot of creativity. It really shifts your attention. Because see, now we have the calendar. Now everything works in a calendar. So you have a certain time you wake up, you got to get a job. So life becomes really about the thinking is responsibility. So it's just how the brain works. The brain works is you have your frontal brain where you're always are trying to make decisions like and resolve a problem. But in order to feel central, you don't use that part of the brain. You actually need to go into the limbic system. And because all day we're actually on this situation of like go, 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 we don't get to that area that we're connected. So what really now we have to like put it in our calendar. We have to say, okay, I'm going to have some fun with my partner. I'm going to send them a text. See, and I'm going to, whereas before you'd be sending texts at night all the time to each other, talking at night. Now you get home, you just want to go to sleep. Yeah, after you put the baby and you got to wake up. So what it is you really have to recreate yourselves as couples and bring new fun in what it is. And I actually do that with couples. I help them recreate. Is like, there's some of them like, is like, I have no idea. So things I'll do is like, I'll say, okay, you're going to create a fun. So they choose a date and a time, and I have them choose a date and time. And you're going to spend $20 on a date. And they're like, what? Yes, $20. Part of the adventure is when you were young, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. So I give them these different ways that they can recreate themselves. And go different places, and how to send notes to each other, remind each other to not talk about family dynamics, not talk about a house, talk about fun things, talk about things that make them happy and fun. And also to identify, like, what are the things that matter to them? Like, what is it that matters to you that gets you so excited? Because whatever did when you were 18, 21, it's not the same thing when you're 40.
Yeah.
So it shifts and changes.
Yeah, just like we don't stay the same person that we were when we were very young. Our needs change sexually as well as relationship wise, and I feel like the communication definitely needs to be there. Like one thing that I adapted as I've gotten older is I do like post coitus, like exchanging notes. Like, I really liked XYZ. I would like more of that next time or whatever. And I feel like besides it not being necessarily like a play by play like in sports, but it adds to that sexy element as well, because like you're like giving the person a compliment, I really enjoy this, or next time let's try this, and it's making you, in a way, it's like stimulating your imagination, and you're thinking about that in a different way, even if you're not in that moment, you're not being intimate, like touching or whatever the case may be. I feel like that brings in another element of like fun and kind of like sexiness to the dynamic.
It does. I think what you just hit it on, Macy, is when you just Marcy. When you just, it's like when you start creating those elements and those thinking and making you feel sexy, you're actually starting to release like dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin in your body prior to the moment of coming together with your partner. Because if you're in a place of like totally anxiety, you have levels of cortisol and in your body, and it reduces that possibility. So what really matters is creating that thinking process and letting go of all these natural juices our body has. So when it comes to that moment, you're looking forward to being with your partner. You're happy about it. And then he's also teasing you. So that teasing happens prior to the moment. And then because one of the things that happens with couples is the whole day is focused on work, 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 work. And all of a sudden they have to like shift, and it doesn't always happen anymore. So we need to have fun.
Yeah. Another thing, somebody I was dating long term, one day he just came home with a candle that when it melts, it turns into like essential oils, like for a massage. Yeah. So that was like another added layer of like sexiness, because I had never had any of those candles, and besides it smelling really good, the oil was like really hydrating for your body. So it was like building in those little moments of intimacy, even if let's say you don't have a lot of time, just kind of something like that can up the ante and like stimulate people's minds and think in a different way about being intimate with your partner. I feel like there's little things that you can do during the day that are intimate, but is not necessarily you touching each other's intimate areas. It's like more of a mental, like you said, it's more of like a mental, getting yourself in that mental space to be intimate with your partner, but in a different kind of way.
Yes, totally. That and that is what's called erotic intelligence. The when Esther Perel talks about that, that's what's called, that's what she means by that. So it's really getting yourself ready. And the thing about it is the woman and the man, like the man tends to be thinking erotically all the time, even as they get older. But we women tend to focus more on the responsibility. So yet women are really good with the idea of fantasy. So if women can start like creating their own world of fantasy, that is going to add that joy, and that you can't wait to be home. And that is the funnest part. So yes. Totally.
I love this conversation.
Yes, totally.
So yeah, so what was it? Okay, so I wanna backtrack a little bit. What was it that inspired you to pursue this kind of career? Because I feel like this is very according to our traditional Latino background, this is a very outside of the box kind of profession. So what was it that motivated you to pursue like this vein of psychology?
Okay. I think for me, it kind of, this topic has showed up on its own. It comes kind of knocking on my door. And it has come knocking on my door on different things. And I'll be honest with you, I thought about it. Oh, híjole, once, if they know that this is what I do, like my community, what they're going to think. And I do know some people do react in funny ways. And then when I go to an event, definitely the conversation on sex starts, so it's always an interesting. But it just showed up on my door, Marcy. when I was young, and I'm talking about 17 or 18 years old, I was already at San Diego State. I was already at the university. So family, my mom, my aunts, and all of them uncles would say, hey, can you talk to, your cousin about, I don't know how to tell them about their period. I don't know how to explain them. And I don't know. So somehow it just like, can you explain? Can you explain? And then by the age of 19, I was already working in the community like a social worker. And
Wow.
so they've asked me, Luz Maria, can you please, please, please help us with the community? We don't know how to speak Spanish. Can you talk to these girls? They don't go into the PE. We don't understand, and I got to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's because my parents don't let us shave our legs, and we're Latinas, I'm not going to be out there with my shorts and not shave my legs. It's just not happening. So I got to bring some more of that. And so then they said, Luz Maria, can you work with these girls that are pregnant and we don't know how to help them? We don't know. So education. So speak Spanish. And then they said, Luz Maria, can you do like an education, on how to use contraception? And here I am, 19 years old, teaching contraception and all of this. So I said, yes, no problem. I'll never forget this. I had a table full of all the contraceptions and the anatomy of the man and the woman and, how to teaching them how to use them. And all the men left. All of
Well, like, what was it? Because they were uncomfortable?
They were so uncomfortable when I actually took out a condom. I told them, it's really important that when you have an erection, don't wait until later because you're going to have semen come out of you so you can get a girl pregnant. This is how you want to put it on. So I took, to them it's like, oh my gosh. Now, remind you, I'm a 19-year-old girl, and these are
bigger, like older men.
guys. Yeah, so.
My gosh. Oh man, that's so interesting. So you were telling me a little bit about what it's like with your family. A lot of people were coming to you naturally. But tell me what it was like growing up when you grew up. Did you grow up here in the States or home
in Mexico?
Back in the country?
I grew up in both. I was born in the United States, and then my parents took us back to Tijuana. So I grew up in Tijuana. And then at the age of 10, I came back to the United States. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what was it like being a child of two lands, basically? Because I feel like you were born here, you had the exposure here, but then you went back home to Mexico, and it was like, was it like culture shock a little bit? Or yeah, like tell me about that, and then I'll ask you a follow-up question.
Yes and no. And I say yes and no because when I came back as to the States, like as a 10-year-old, they would make fun of me talking, my enunciation and all that. And I would tell them, well, if you can say what I say in English with the enunciation in Spanish, then you don't make fun of me because I know more than you do. Was this little girl. I don't even know where I got this. To me, it's like 2 is better than 1, or 1.5 is better than, So they would make fun of me. Now, I do believe there's been like some advantages. I'm not a short Latina. By at the age of 13, I was already 5'4", and then I reached 5'6" by the age of 15, 16. So I was not as short. Oh, wow. And then I was really athletic. I was like, you're a really athletic girl. So I felt like they would laugh at me. But when we were in recess or playing sports, I felt like that was like, let me show you who's got it. Let me show who can throw that ball. And let me show you who's going to run faster. And that was one of the things I had about me that I was able to use. And I just, for some reason, I never felt less. I felt like, what's your problem? Even if they made fun of me, that was like me growing up.
Yeah. My mom, well, she grew up in the Dominican Republic, and over here, a lot of, she's a teacher actually. So a lot of the non-Latino teachers would be like, "Oh my God, I don't understand your accent." She's like, yeah, my accent is a little strong, but that's what happens when you have more than one language. How many languages do you speak? And I was like, oh, I'm gonna use that. I like that. So okay, so besides growing up Latina and like being a child of like basically two worlds, what was it like? What was? I feel like there's a lot of hypocrisy in Latino culture when it comes to sex, because we know everybody's having sex,
Yeah.
right? But nobody ever talks about it, and it's not something that you. At least I didn't feel comfortable talking to my mother about any of that stuff. Growing up, it was more like I would go to my friends who probably knew less than I did, and we would have conversation based on stuff that we would read in magazines like YM and like what is it, Cosmopolitan, yes. Things like that. So what was it like? What do you feel about like the hypocrisy of we know people are having sex, but then it's very taboo to have these conversations in our culture.
Well, it's the consequences, you feel afraid to face why you decide to not share. I knew that if I personally would have shared that I was having sex before I got married, all my friends would say, "Oh my God, es una cualquiera, she's like a no good anymore." So there is this right that is given but to our society to put down the woman. And in having sex, early on is like the perfect conversation to put her down. Losing her virginity, it's like es una cualquiera. It's like the Madonna or the prostitute. Like, which one are you? The Madonna or the virgin? So it's which one are you? So it's just that's the reason we became hypocrites about not being honest about it. It's just a consequence.
And then the thing is that people are having sex regardless, whether we're having the conversations or not. But the thing is that because we're not having these conversations openly, this is why there's at least when I was growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a high incidence of girls getting pregnant, because there was no education and nobody was having the conversations with them in the first place.
Yes.
No,
you say that. I actually, at the school district, I used to do this talk for mothers and daughters called "Do You Really Need a Boyfriend?" And it was really about the intention about teaching mothers that these girls are going to have a boyfriend whether we like it or not. And we really need to talk about sex education. I know how uncomfortable. Somehow there's this belief system that if I tell you about it, what you're going to do now is do it. And the truth of it is, sex feels good. When you're 13, 14, 15, whenever the time you get a kiss, it's going to feel good. And then therefore your body is going to react. The hormones is just a natural thing, and boys are going to feel it. So the girl has this amazing, this just amazing experience and this responsibility to hold it all back. Like it's like this is what our mothers didn't understand is, well, if this is going to happen, then what can you do? It's better that you start talking to me about it. It's like who you can trust versus the boy telling you, well, just make sure as soon as we have sex, párate, or go wash up, go put oh my God, the things that people tell them to do. Drink this tea.
Oh my God.
toma el té santo, ese te va a hacer, like, so you have your period, or
it's a moon tea, it's gonna make your period come down, which is false. But no, it was very interesting growing up, especially first generation here. I was born in Dominican Republic and I came here at a young age. So I was first one here that grew up in this different culture than my mom, and it was very my mom went to school of monjitas, so it was completely different than my exposure to about sex. So it was just it was really different and interesting, and I feel like had I had those conversations with my mom, a lot of the things that happened wouldn't have happened. You know, even though I feel like I was a late bloomer, I didn't lose my virginity until I was like, I think, in college or something like that. However, um, I feel like these are conversations that need to be had because a lot of the boys, especially, like to guilt trip the
Oh,
girls
yes.
about not having sex, or like, all the little lies that they say to like kind of get them to do it.
Yes.
And and also go, and the conversation also needs to go further, that a no is a full
Yeah.
sentence. So if a girl tells a boy no, then you need to respect her wishes. It doesn't mean like she said no, now I'm gonna try to convince her. No is a full
Yeah.
sentence, and you need to stop and walk
Yeah.
away, and that's it. That I'm putting my grain of salt because I have a teenage boy right now. But I feel like this is conversations that need to be had, because in Latino households, a lot of the boys, the boys that I dated when I was younger, it was kind of like, oh, she said no, but she doesn't really mean that. Like, I'm gonna convince her, and
Yeah.
she's gonna change her mind.
Well, yeah.
You know,
Well, of course, because that's what they want. I mean, as a young boy, they've got their hormones going everywhere, and then they've got a whole bunch of stories. And then the boys have masturbated. The boys are pro at masturbation. So now they need to create this new experience. They want to have this experience. Whereas girls generally do not masturbate. Girls generally don't even look at their vulvas. I mean, girls are so disconnected from their bodies because we're not allowed to look at it, to know how it feels. And we have this guilt that if we feel pleasure, there's something wrong. And then when we do, how to push it back. And then boys on the other side are like giving a handshake. Boy, you had, sex. Let me give it, high five. So it's this thing. It doesn't work.
It's a huge
Yeah.
dichotomy. It's like very different.
No. So you have this push and pull, and the consequences are for the girls, and the responsibility is for the girls. That's where it's like what you said, Marcy, having your boys and teaching them responsibility. The amazing thing is there.
Even with my students, the boys that I have as students, I feel like I have the conversation of consent, but I take it out of a sexual context, because obviously, I'm not gonna have that conversation with elementary school students. But learning that if somebody says no, then that is their decision, and that's okay. You can feel disappointed, but at the end of the day, that's their choice, and they said no. So having these conversations with the boys from early on can help change the trajectory, and how our culture is not seen necessarily, but how people experience our culture in that way, especially little girls. Because I feel like no vale la pena enseñarle a una niña don't have sex, but then the boys are like high-fiving them, yeah, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and who are they supposed to have it with?
Exactly.
And generally, I mean, now now we're having this new consciousness of acceptance of different energies, or within your same sex. But overall, we're still in this heterosexual relationships, and boys are going to look for the girls, and here we are.
Yeah, and also like changing, like that's another layer, right? Like making it okay for people that are not heterosexual to feel okay being, themselves.
Yes.
I knew growing up that was like, that was an insult. Like, you wanted to insult a boy, you would like tell them that they were gay,
Yeah.
which is not really an insult, but at that time nobody wanted to be that. Nobody wanted to be the odd man out,
Yeah.
because they had the same sexual preference as somebody else. And a lot of the men that I grew up with had to repress that part of themselves until they finally were able to get some freedom and go to college and go away, and then they were able to explore themselves sexually in that way, out in the open, where they felt that they were not going to be judged. But still, like, the conversation needs to go regardless, consent, regardless of your CIS hetero or otherwise, like regardless of that, we need to be having these conversations more and more. And I really love the work that you're doing right now, because I feel like it's intrinsic, and as part of, I feel like society is changing slowly, and then, having people doing the work and helping the community in the way that you're doing is so um essential.
Thank you, Marcy.
So, what was I gonna say? So, how do you tap into your inner child?
Well, your inner child is about that little girl or that little boy that is the one that is the most genuine. That is the one that is more innocent in our sense, and it is the one that has got hurt. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about our inner child, it's really talking about that life force that is pure, or healing that life force that is pure. So how do we go there? How do we go there as an adult? It's really about going there and about healing or creating things that are fun. So, so the inner child, if you're going to tap into your inner child, is about doing things you did that you really like when you were a little girl. So, for example, if you like coloring books, and you just had, it's really about having a coloring book with that color book, whatever is that, and play with your inner child. Do what you did back then. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is. So that's really tapping into that innocent, that little playful, that fun, that one is innocent, that the one that just loves. Another way to tap into the inner child is when we dance. When we dance not with the intent of being sexualized, but you dance like if nobody's watching, where you're just having fun. Mm-hmm. And you move and you play. So it's really about being playful, about being fun, about speaking what it is there. See, your little girl, our little girl, would ask whatever was there. Mm-hmm. With no fearing of judgment. It is how the adults would respond to even a question like, why do I not have a penis, mommy? Why mm-hmm. does my brother have one and I don't have one? Oh, that looks ugly, mom. Why is that thing that hangs look so ugly? What? And it's in being hurt by it. Somebody slapping your mouth or somebody, that's the part that gets hurt. And mm-hmm. what it starts to build, and we start building these like algorithms, unconsciously, mm-hmm. that start building us. It's kind of like we start driving, when we learn to drive at the beginning, we're consciously looking at everything when we drive. And the right mm-hmm. to the left, how we hold the vehicle, making sure everything. And eventually none of that. You just can be going from one place to another and you're just blank. You're focused on everything. Well, that inner child mm-hmm. that got hurt starts moving in the world as a hurt person and shows mm-hmm. up. And it's unconsciously. Just like you drive, you don't do it with that intention. So that little girl felt abandoned when she's in her relationship. Anytime they'll tell her no, or they're trying to make her like, let's have sex. You're no good. I don't like you. Well, if that little inner child girl got rejected and is a fear of abandonment, she's more likely to say yes to the guy. So that's that little girl that is in that. So having fun with a little girl. So how do we tap is to heal her. And of course, the younger we can heal her, the better it is. And then have fun with her.
Yeah, I did a lot of work around the inner child. I practiced Kundalini yoga. So one of the activities that we did was that we wrote a letter to our younger self, our little girl or little boy, whoever was there, and just basically telling them that you're gonna protect them and that they don't have to worry anymore or whatever. And it sounds like a silly activity, but it was a group of at least 30 to something people. Everybody was hysterical, crying as they're writing this letter. So, it's like letting that little person inside of you know that they're mm-hmm. safe now and that you got their back, that you're going to take care of them. So I feel like that's super important. So I was really interested in reading that you created a non-for-profit So I wanted you to kind of shed light about what you do with the non-for-profit and how do you help the community that way.
Okay, I have a nonprofit. It's called Latinas with Purpose. This nonprofit is to give a voice to women through their storytelling. We all have stories to share. Every person in this world has a story to share. And the intention behind Latinas is that we are so in the lower spectrum in our humanity. And I believe who we are so magical. We bring a tapestry of color, of life that other cultures don't have. The way we love, the way we bring in our community, the way we see the world, and the way we do art, anything there is regarding of who we are is just amazing in our abilities. But what happens, they get taken down. We're not given that right. It takes, and I can share that's how I got started, because something was taken away from me because me being a Latina. So like you Latina, like you trying to run something like this, it's like, no, this is a man's thing. This is a man with money, man with capacities. So all of that gets taken from us. So it's a voice. So you write your story and we publish books. So you become an author as a consequence of it. And also we publish art. We tell a story not just through words, but we also tell a story through art. You can look at an art piece and you can see a whole story just by looking at an art piece. And I have seen artwork of Latinas. They are just amazing. And they're slowly moving up, but they don't have a place in this world that we really deserve. Not until Frida Kahlo, with that movie that we had, Frida Kahlo, was women's art considered. And generally, when they look at Latinas artwork, they think of the Day of the Dead, of La Calacas, of the skulls. Yeah. And I think it's beautiful. Yet I do believe Latinas have way more to offer. We can also create the beautiful artwork that any other person. So this nonprofit is to be able to give a voice. And then there's also healing. So I guide women when they write the story. So we start with the beginning of the story, like how do you even do an introduction? And then also we go into like forgiving, and we talk about, how to write with emotion. And then we talk about what do we triumph? What have we learned? What do we want to tell the audience? So there's a lot of healing and moving through the stories. And that's one of the things that we do is through the nonprofit. So it's really exciting, really exciting.
I love that. And then the other thing that you do, which is Discover Passion with Dr. Luz, that's like the coaching that you do, correct?
Yes.
With the couples and everybody else. So go ahead.
Yes, and then I do the retreat, the Discover the Goddess retreat. So I do that with my business.
Ooh, wait! I saw on the website you guys are going to Costa Rica.
Yes. In July.
Ooh, when is that happening?
In July. Yes, it is. It's in the end of July. And it is, when we're talking about healing that little girl, we're talking also to bring in that goddess. How do we give birth to this goddess that we are? So on my Instagram, you can follow me on my Instagram, Discover Passion with Dr. Luz. And we will have like little names of goddesses throughout the world, and what their importance of who they were. So you want to find this goddess, one or two goddesses, which are as many that you can connect with, and you want to give birth to that's within you. So there's 7-day retreat. So the first 2 days is really exciting. It's really about looking at the history of women, looking at the abuse that women have, but not with the intention of putting anybody down, but is healing it. Healing also the counterpart of the male energy too. Healing our relationship with our moms through all of this, because that's also something that needs to happen. Yes. And then there's also a day that we need to be free and have fun in Costa Rica. Then I do one whole day on orgasms, like understanding orgasms. And then I do like giving birth to the goddess. Like, what does that look like? I have with me travels a belly dancer, so she'll be dancing and giving birth, moving that energy, that sexual energy, every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do a lot of tantra work as well, kundalini. So we'll do that. We do breath work. We do stretches. We move our energies. And so it's a lot of fun, but it's really healing that feminine energy.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. Yeah, so I was gonna chime in about the masculine piece. As there's divine feminine, but there's also divine masculine, right? And we have both of that inside of all of us, men and women. So it's important to like acknowledge both and feed into that in a way and carry yourself like the goddess that you are. But yeah, I love that. That's like, there's another person that I follow on Instagram that she does similar retreat, Cosmic Christine. She does diosa retreats. That's what she calls it, and they're really really interesting. And the women that go, because it's a hefty contribution, but it's like you're investing in yourself. So when they come back, they're like diosas, and they get us like a special ring, and it's like 7 days or 5 days of like group exercises and self work and all of that, which is really cool. So I was gonna say about the orgasms. It's funny. I participated in the vagina monologues before the pandemic hit, and I actually did the monologue of the woman that had never looked at her vagina and had never had an orgasm either. So it was very interesting because it was very in contrast of who I am as a person. But yeah, it's important that it's crazy how many, not crazy, but it's like really mind-boggling to me how many women have actually not looked at their intimate
vulva
areas. They don't know that their vulva. They have never looked at. They don't know what it looks like. They don't know what kind they have. They don't know what color it is. They don't know anything. So it's like, take a mirror, look down there. It's important to get to know yourself. And then a lot of women also, there has been a lot of shame regarding intimate touching of themselves, like self-pleasure. So a lot of the time, like some women that I speak to, they're like, oh no, I don't do that. I was like, so you're giving the car keys to somebody that you don't know if they know how to drive the car. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, you should be able to know what feels good to you so that you can guide the person. But I feel like that's all part of collective healing. Like, people need to do the work to be able to heal themselves and their relationship with sex and their own body. And a lot of people, they have a disconnect between, like, they disassociate. Like, they're here, quote unquote, but they're not actually in their body. Which is obviously that's a trauma response to different things that they've been through. But it's important to kind of acknowledge that and try to do the healing work behind that to reconnect with yourself in a deeper level.
And I think what you said, Marcy, you really touched on something that's really important. If a woman doesn't feel good about, or even hasn't looked at her own vulva and thinks it's beautiful, how can she allow herself to feel free in the experience of being, when they're connected with their partners? They're not going to want to be touched. They're not going to want to look, they're not like, don't go, keep the lights down low, take care of your business and be done with it. But when you really look at it and when you really love it and you say, my God, what a beautiful vulva I have. What a beautiful color. And if they can take for a moment to think, just think, that is the entrance to creation. Just think that there is the entrance to creation. In my body is the existence of creation. My body was made to nourish creation. So when you start looking at it in terms of what we have been raised at, and you'll look at it in the truth, in nature, as a way it is, it's kind of if you take a seed And when you put it in the earth, what it blossoms and it gives you. I mean, isn't that magical? And that's who we are. It's magic. And so if anybody's hearing me in this podcast, ladies, que no les dé vergüenza. No les dé nada de vergüenza. Agarren el espejo. Get that? Look at it. You know, smell it. Wash it. and enjoy it. Because if you're comfortable with yourself, you're going to allow your partner to really guide your partner to really enjoy it.
Yeah. There was one of my favorite monologues. I think it's called Bob. So basically, it's a woman that she also was disconnected from her vulva. She had never seen it before. And like, she was like one of these women, like, turn the lights off. Don't look at me. Don't look at it. But Bob liked to look at her vulva. So he would sit there for hours looking at it, like it was like this piece of art. Like, you need to admire yourself in the same way, you know, and feel yourself. Like, know what the texture is. Like, all these things are important. It helps to tap in, because like, once you know yourself, it's just another level of knowing yourself more. Because like, if you know yourself, who you are as a person, correct? Like, personality wise, you know the things that you like, your likes and dislikes, but you also need to know yourself as intimately as you want another person, a partner, whoever, male or female, or non-binary, to know you. So it just helps to create more intimate relationships when you already have that relationship with yourself.
When you love yourself, you allow someone else to love you, because you can't allow someone to love you, your body, if you don't love it. It just can't.
Yeah,
it just doesn't work that way.
It's true. And a lot of women also have body dysmorphia. Like, they don't, like, people compliment them, but they don't really see what we see. And it's sad, but you know, doing this kind of work, especially with you, and going on these retreats, I feel like can help a lot of women heal and like tap into that goddess energy and the divine feminine that we all have within us. And I love that you're like, that's a portal to creation. I love that.
It is. We are a portal to creation. And I love belly dancing, because one of the things is you show your belly and then you wiggle your belly. And the more belly it is and the more it wiggle, the sexier it is. So what it does, it just takes us away from that conversation, you know? So
I love that. So what do you do to tap into your divine feminine? Like, what are some things that, I guess, that you, if you want to share, some things that you do to continue to tap into the divine feminine?
I guess one of the things being, I would say maybe athletic, was something that allowed me to be comfortable with my body. And so there was no shame for myself. I looked and I was very athletic. So that was something. And so so one of the things is I accept my body, and I see that my body is beautiful. Now, it doesn't mean it meets, now that I'm older, it doesn't mean it meets the quotas of society itself. But when I am with my partner, we have a wonderful time. There's nothing there. Another thing in terms of caring is I love to put oils and creams on my whole body, like my face, my body, my neck. There's something about doing the ritual of it. And every day when I come out of the shower, there's something about putting it in the way I put it, and then just allowing myself to be okay with that. And if I have time and I got the radio, I have music on while I do it. And it's not about turning me on sexually. It's about loving me. It's about accepting just the way it feels, the way my skin feels. And then I have oils, and then I've got creams, and I put layers of stuff on my body. I do. I do have all of that, and it's fun, and I take care of me, and that is some of the things, my own personal things that I enjoy. And then, of course, all the things I create with my partner.
Nice. Okay. Another thing is, I wanted to add also, don't be afraid of asking for what you want. Like, people don't know what you like unless you say what you want.
Yes.
¿Cómo se dice en español? it's a little vulgar. El que no grita no mama. If you don't ask for what you want, you're not gonna get
Yeah.
what it is that you desire. And it's important to have these conversations of like, oh wow, I saw this on TV, or I read about this on an article about this sexual practice, or whatever the case may be, and I was interested in it. Would you like to explore
Yeah.
that with me? Having conversations like that is so important because, your partner, regardless, is not gonna know what you like.
Yeah.
It's like me. Like, I like beans, right? But I don't like every frijol. I like certain kinds. Nobody's gonna know that unless I tell
Yeah.
them. And it's the same thing with sex.
Yes.
And being intimate with somebody.
There's two sides to that, Marcy. There's the two parts.
Mm-hmm.
There is the part that you can't ask for something you don't know. So in order for you to ask something, you need to know your body. You need to have an opportunity to acknowledge your body, what you like and you don't know. And also the part of the woman is when the guy or your partner is exploring you, when you ask for something, you say, oh, it's right there, for them to continue to do what it is that you like. And the other side,
Mm-hmm.
what I get to see with my work, when I work with my couples, is that men have been giving this huge responsibility that if sex goes well is because it went because they're good in bed. So it is, so therefore they've got this huge responsibility. So they don't even have a woman's body. So they become good lovers if they ended up having this amazing woman that ended up teaching them, or they ended up being educated. And what men define themselves as good lovers a lot of the time is just what they see in porno. So men bring that to the table for women. And if women don't ask because they don't know, and men are supposed to know, so that's what ends up happening. Women don't know. Women are expected to know, and they get their resources from porno. And what they see in porno is not really human. It's not really, in fact, a lot of men destroy themselves or feel terrible because they compare their own body, their penis size, to the guy in the porno. So, and generally you put a guy in porno, man that has a very huge penis. So, and then they think that that's what's done correctly, is what you do in porno. So here we have the man's teacher, porno. Women don't know themselves, and men have this responsibility. It doesn't work. So it needs to change. These conversations. In fact, I'm about to publish a book in spring with a friend of mine. She's from Peru, and she's a finance expert, and I'm the sex expert. So we're about to publish a book on sex and money.
I love that. But definitely, like, it's so important. Like, these conversations, like, people need to talk.
We do.
Because there's no way, you can't assume, it's like giving somebody a car with a learner's permit. They don't have the basic knowledge.
Yes.
If that. And then you're expecting them to do like a long distance drive to like Arizona from New York City. That's not going to work. You have to have these conversations and also educate yourselves. And if you need to, there's workshops that you can attend that will teach you about different things that you might be interested in, you know? So it's doing the research, also having the conversations, but also, with other people, but also looking for that professional help if you need to, to be able to have the sexual relationship thrive in that way.
And if you don't mind, Marcy, I'd like to share something that I get to see, and I get to see in Latina women. A lot of Latina women, and not just Latina women, but in order to really favor and be able to be loved by their men, they'll do anything, and they consider themselves amazing lovers. And their definition of amazing lovers is about mimicking what they see the women in porn. So they mimic those behaviors, and then they say they enjoy them. And then what happens after a few years, they no longer can deal with that anymore. They can no longer play that game. So then they say, I don't want my partner to do it. And then now they're angry is, but you told me you loved it. I did, but I don't like it anymore. Or I never did. I just did it to please you. So now I get to work with the after effects. So what really is so important is for women to connect with themselves, to really see and love themselves, and to really be able to say yes and no to what they like and don't like, and not to mimic behaviors, and just to be able to educate themselves. So just adding a little note because of what I get to say with my coaching.
So I'm going to share something. So when I was married, I thought that it was okay to like pretend like you had an orgasm, right? Mm-hmm. So, the intimate relationship it felt good, but I never got to that point. So I don't know where the conversation went. We had already gotten divorced, but then he was like, I think reminiscing on like stuff that had happened. And I was like, yeah, no, actually I never really enjoyed that. And he was just like, how dare you? Like, he was so offended. But I feel like women were socialized to just be okay with certain things and not really speak up. So, as I've gotten to know myself on a more intimate level, I don't do that anymore, obviously, but it's important to do that, to have those conversations, and to make sure that the things that you're accepting in bed or anywhere else, that you're actually okay with that, and that you're not just doing it just because the other person wants you to do it.
Yeah. Very, very true. Never fake an orgasm, ladies. You're listening to me.
I know.
Never fake an orgasm. If you didn't get one,
it doesn't help them. It doesn't help them at all.
No,
it doesn't help them at all.
No, it doesn't.
And even if like some guys take it like, como te digo, they take it como que tú lo estás ofendiendo, like you're offending them. But it's really like, if you're a good student or a good study, like I say, you're gonna take the feedback and then like go back and like try to do better. Not like take it like, oh my God, you're telling me I'm worthless as a man because I can't make you orgasm. You have to ask what feels good, and like, go from there to build on that, your sexual repertoire.
Yeah. And then the woman if the woman can make herself have an orgasm, it's important that a woman knows it. So it's like, okay, it is like, okay, to the clitoris. Okay, no, it's not to the right, it's to the left. No, not up higher, little low, because there is a specific area where all of that area has nerves, but there's some areas where there is a sensation where you're going to really let go. But if you don't know where it's at, and then the other part, if men, you're listening to this podcast, I hope you are, do not be offended.
There's a lot of compadres.
Yeah, okay, compadres, please, do not get offended. You don't own a vulva and a clitoris. That's why you don't know. Not because you're bad at it, is because you don't own one. And it is your partner that's supposed to guide you. And those are the conversations that were never had. It was more, you're supposed to know it all.
Yeah.
And don't fake orgasms.
Which is false. Yeah, don't fake orgasms, and definitely take the constructive criticism and it's not really criticism. It's like, take the guidance and, fly with it and can continue to experiment. Because it's not saying that they don't want to continue to, be intimate with you. It's just, we would like this better next time. Yeah. That's it, Okay, this was such a great conversation, Dr. Luz. Thank you so much for being on the show. And I'm going to end the show how I usually end it, which is follow me at Comadreando Pod on Instagram, and follow Dr. Luz at, can you please drop your handle?
Yeah, it's Discover Passion with Dr. Luz. I didn't bring it here, but it's Discover Passion with Dr. Luz at my Instagram. And then you can follow us.
Awesome. And if you have any questions whatsoever for me or Dr. Luz, please feel free to send me a Comadre-Gram via email at Marcy at Comadreandopod.com, or slide up into my DMs. Thank you for spending time with your comadres. And Dr. Luz, you're officially a comadre now, so welcome to the fold.
Thank you for including me as a comadre.
So thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello, comadre.
Hey, comadre.
Do you have a minute for comadre time?